example of German ineptitude, funnily enough. Remember when Dario Franchitti, wasn't it, in the Merc, Scottish driver, who took off like an aeroplane and went 200-300 yards flying vertically through the air? And everybody said, it was reported in the press that it was because the aerodynamics of the car were wrong. They weren't wrong. The aerodynamics of the car were fine. Mercedes merely softened the rear springs to make it comfortable for the drivers, and as a result, when the car started going over bumps on the Mulsanne straight, it started oscillating. Air got under the car, and the whole thing jumped and flew. It was just, wonderful, really. Stupidity amongst Germans. Can you believe it? But I really could tell you an awful lot on that subject. I'm not being coy, I'd rather not, because of the laws of defamation. You've mentioned a name, and there's an awful lot to be said on that subject, an awful lot. And I know, and it says the name on the car, front and rear, if I remember rightly. I just ask you not to get me started. There just might be a friend or a relation in the audience, I don't know, who is awfully wealthy and would sue me for slander. And I don't want to get started on that particular subject. Yes, sir? Difficult. 2 ticks, I'll come back to you. Francis Tuthill is a VW Beetle Porsche man who lives in Oxfordshire, and he's prepared many, many cars over the years for many, many people. He was doing, competed in lots of rallies. He did the London to Sydney marathon, I think it was 77 or 78, he did that in a VW Beetle, and made something of a name for himself among Porsches and Beetle people. And he's well acquainted with Dave Richards of ProDrive, of course. Dave Richards of ProDrive is not a dishonourable man. He's a very, very honest, honourable man with good business sense, and he does great things. I won't say anything about Francis Tuthill. Yes, sir. They won the Targa Florio outright on many occasions, 6 or 7, something like that. They had the RS60. Was the successor to the 59 RSK Porsche. And I think one of their finest wins on the Targa Story outright was 1966 with the 906 Porsche, which was amazing. I'm glad you brought the question up, because this was the car really that started the fight between Ferdinand Piëch and Butzi Porsche, because Butzi designed the 904 very, very quickly in 1964, and it did great things. I seem to remember it also won the Targa Story outright in 65. And it was still a nice car that you could drive on the road. It's hellish noisy in the cockpit, of course, with that 2-litre 4-cam engine out behind you. It was all fiberglass, there was no insulation. And then the 906 came in 1966, and they won the Targa Story with that. But the 906 was the first Porsche sports racing car, really, that you couldn't drive on the road, and it was designed by Ferdinand Piëch. And when people had success with the 906, Piëch thought, well, I'm actually better than Butzi, I think he's better than he. And so the whole racing program started after the Targa Florio 1966. And that gave the impetus to spur the company on to produce first the 910, then the 907, the 908 3-litre cars, and then the fabulous 4.5-litre 917, which finally went to the top at the Moines in 1970. Wouldn't it have been fantastic to have retained the Targa Florio? It was just, I never went to it, unfortunately. Perhaps you did, I don't know. Did anybody go to the Targa Florio in its heyday? Anybody here? It must have been fabulous to race those cars, around that circuit. And it just comes to mind, there's one famous story about the Emilia, 100,000-mile race around Italy when Hans Hermann was driving the race in 1954 with the 550 RS. And they were hammering down a straight piece of road flat out, and I suppose the top speed of that little car was 125, 130 miles an hour, something like that, at that time. And they were approaching a level crossing at full speed, and there was no chance of stopping, whatever. And the barriers went down. And so Hans Hermann smacked his co-driver's helmet hard to indicate, get your head down. The train was coming. You know, it was there. They couldn't stop. So they both bobbed their heads down as low as they could, went under the barriers, and continued, you know, with their hearts doing this. But they got away with it. Incredible. Targa Florio, there we are. Any more questions? Seth? Yeah. It's simply because Porsche is selling too many cars. The only time they've really gone into motorsport ostensibly is to prove the worth of something. And Ferry Porsche, as you know, always said there was no point in paying for advertising space in the international press. If you did well in an event, you get free coverage by the press anyway. If Porsche stopped making cars tomorrow at Zuffenhausen, financially they wouldn't have to worry, because the Weissach test center, which is used by hundreds of manufacturers, you know, all of them basically, produces huge revenue for the company. It really does. So if you ever see a water-cooled 911 in rallying, you'll know that Porsche need to sell cars. But they don't, because they are making so much money at the moment. They really are. More than you'd think. I wish they would. I was screaming at Zuffenhausen back in September. You know, stop all your nonsense and this fighting with Piech. Ignore him. Just build a car and do it. You know, to me, the Le Mans 24-hour car race without a Porsche is just unimaginable. And you know, in the 80s, when the Group C program was running with the 956s and then the 962s, you know, we all trooped off to Le Mans every year to watch Jackie Ickx, Derek Bell, Hans-Jürgen Stuck, Jochen Mass, and all those people doing great things. It was just so fabulous. And then the silk-cut Jaguars were there, the Saab and Mercedes-Benzes, and all the Group C2 cars from Britain, which were just beautifully built and made such a fantastic spectacle. They were so fast, and you know, it was all wonderful. And then Le Mans went through one of its stupid periods, and what are they, you know, what's it now? As I said earlier, diesel engine Audis that look, I mean, what do they look like? Do you think they're pretty? I don't. There's nothing, absolutely nothing. And last year at Le Mans, Audi had rented half the damn circuit, so you couldn't go to anywhere, all those lovely places. And I always used to go to a beautiful cafe. You know, when you've had enough of the noise, you've got to escape, and you walk a mile from the circuit, and there was a wooden cafe on the side of the road, public road, that had been run by the same family for years and years and years. Absolutely, that cafe's gone. I used to sit in the sunshine outside, drinking wine and eating their dreadful food, you know, which was just fabulous. And you'd watch all the all the British people, you know, the cavalcade of Brits that go to Le Mans every year, watching the sports cars go past them, and everything from Austin Healey Sprites with blue smoke coming out of their exhaust pipes to Lamborghini Countaches and Ferraris and Porsches. It was just wonderful. It's all gone because, as you say, corporate hospitality. Audi was there in force. I always go to Parc Rouge, you know, it's a dreadful place to be. You can't pitch a tent, the ground is awful, it stinks like the gents' lavatory everywhere you go. But it's a great place to be because of the atmosphere. And Audi had rented half of it. We couldn't get on there at 9 o'clock in the morning. It was full. Absolutely appalling. But then, sorry. Yes, sir.